everything that I thought I would get from that sale, none of it came true. Dude, I fell into the darkest depression I had ever experienced. I didn't see my full potential for most of my life because I had that internal dialogue that said, you're unworthy, until you reach something. And so I thought that the path to worthiness meant I had to accomplish something. Throughout my Tagger experience, which is the last company I started and sold, I would wake up every single morning and I'd think about all the people who I wanted to prove wrong. And did it cause a lot of internal turmoil in me? Yes. But did it get me up? Yes. Now, did those people care that I sold the company? No. No one cared, right?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fearful Giants, the podcast that's getting loud about something most leaders never talk about out loud, their fear. I'm Clay Stelzer, executive coach and founder of 1560, the coaching company. And every week I sit down with a founder, a CEO, or an executive leader to talk about the stuff they're not posting about or talking about on LinkedIn. And today we've got Peter Kennedy here. And if you don't know Peter is an entrepreneur. He's an author, a founder, CEO. And what's so interesting and why I want Peter on the show is that he's deeply interested in exploring the intersection of business success and personal evolution. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. However, before we go there, just to give you some context, Peter built his reputation in the tech and marketing world as the founder of Tagger Media, a leading influencer marketing and social intelligence company that he successfully scaled and sold to Sprout Media. It was a huge success 2 or 3 years back. And now he's the CEO and co-founder of Evolvewell, which is an AI-driven learning and development platform for frontline workforces in high turnover industries like aviation and hospitality. Evolvewell gives employees the training and on-the-job support they need to succeed while giving leaders real-time visibility into knowledge gaps and automatically filling them. Hey, Peter, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. I'm really good. I'm really excited about this conversation. This is going to be an easy one. You and I have talked a fair amount in the past, and we have a whole lot in common. And I just think this is going to be a ton of fun for us. And I imagine it's going to be a ton of fun for people listening.
Agree, man. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Good. So here's why I wanted you on the show. There's 3 reasons. And these are the things we're going to talk about. The first is you've seen behind the curtain of success. You've done the thing that so many people want to do, build a massive company and sell it and reap the rewards in air quotes. And when you got to the other side of that success, it wasn't what you imagined it to be. So I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion for us to have. I think a lot of people are going to find that to be quite interesting and inspiring. Second thing, since then, you've done your work. And what I mean your work is you've done your personal work. You've grown up. You've seen what drives you. And you wrote a book about this awakening called The Remembering, which chronicles your story through this period between, post-success before Evolvewell. And I want to talk about this awakening. I want to talk about what you learned, what you did, and why that was so pivotal in your life. I think that's going to be also quite inspiring. And lastly, all of this work you did in this awakening period, you have now blended into this professional life of yours, the current day professional life with Evolvewell. And I want to talk about how you do that. I want to talk about the practices you're using to really show up and lead in a different way in your own life and with the people that support you. How's that sound?
It sounds good. It sounds like I have it all figured out, which I don't. But
dude,
yes.
You got it all figured out, man. That's why you're on the show. I don't have anyone on the show that doesn't have all their shit figured out. So this is going to be perfect. Okay.
It is a process of constantly waking up every day. That's all it is.
Constantly waking up. I love that. And I agree with you. And what does that mean to you?
The minute you wake up and you think you've figured something out, the next day you realize you haven't figured anything out and you're just waking up. And so I think that's why we're all here. It's just to wake up every single day and, become conscious of yourself, your behaviors, and what you need to work on.
I agree. Every day we have a new adventure. This day is different than the last day. I think I told you, I woke up a couple weeks ago to learn I had cancer. Wasn't expecting that. And I don't need to make light of that now for everyone. If you're listening, you probably don't know that I'm fine. I had it removed and all as well. But the reason I bring that up is every day is different. And we always have an opportunity to meet whatever's in front of us.
Yes. And just like your diagnosis, it's like I believe that, listen, my soul came here for a reason, and it's to learn and grow. And so every hardship that I face, everything that I go through, there's a reason for that, and when you're in it, it's like, this sucks. I can't believe this is happening. And then when you look back, it's like, okay, well, what did I learn from that? And so I throw it at you, like, what did you learn from that? Like, how did your life change in a more meaningful way when you had the diagnosis and then cured it?
Well, at first, I had the human experience of fear. Oh shit, what does this mean? There's uncertainty. All of a sudden, my life is not what I imagined it to be. So there's some grieving in that. There's some letting go of the old dream or vision I had for my life. Now, luckily, again, it was removed and I have a very positive future ahead of me. So things could be a lot worse. But, after the dealing with the emotion, dealing with the fear, dealing with the letting go of who I thought I was, what I thought my vision was before this, then we can step into the curiosity that you're talking about around, how is this here for me? Like, what is this here to wake me up to? And I'm in those questions right now. I'm, constantly exploring. This is like, literally a week ago yesterday at surgery. So I'm still sort of in this. So I'm using my tools and I'm doing what I can to be awake and see myself, notice myself, move through this, be as curious as I can and as compassionate as I can. That's kind of what's happening for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that whole process of like fear, anger, sadness, death of whatever that life was, and then that kind of like change of perspective of like, okay, what is the meaning of this? And getting real curious. That is the human experience, man. And you just did that so beautifully. I mean, you did it fast. Like typically people don't do it as quickly as you
Well,
did. But yeah, it's the whole point is not to skip any of those stages, dude. Like go through all those and feel those, because each one is a divine emotion that is just a signal pointing to something super meaningful. And if you bypass that, then you're missing out on the experience of why you're on this earth.
and I appreciate you saying I've been through this fast. It's not done. And I'm also going to give myself the comfort and compassion to fall back into stage one. Meaning like maybe there's more upset that I need to work through. Maybe, and that's okay. I don't know what I'm going to feel this afternoon. I have no idea. But the one thing I am going to try to do is to just meet myself wherever I am and allow myself to have the experience that is in front of me. That is something I'm pretty focused on.
Yeah, totally. It's, our house burned down in the Palisades fire, and so everyone's nervous system reacts differently. Some people were like stuck in fear or stuck in, freeze mode. And I go in this hyper vigilant, like solve problems. And that's how my nervous system works, which is super helpful. But 2 months after that, within like 48 hours, we had a rental, we had all the different things that we needed. But 2 months later, people would be like, I'm sorry about your house. And I was like, could care less. I felt nothing. And so I was bypassing that emotion of like grief, because grief has always been something that I had a hard time doing because it was like, what a waste of time. It's like, why would I pause, look on the side of the road and just like grieve just walk through the shit, keep going. Eventually you'll get out. And it's that reminder every time you got to pause and just stop and feel that. And wasn't until my co-founder, who you know well, Alex King Harris, like sat me down. He's like, dude, you need to like feel something. And I'm like, you're right, I do. And then I just did the work to feel, but yeah.
Good for you for surrounding yourself with incredible people like Alex. He is a gift. He is
Yes.
an incredible human being.
Yeah. Surround yourself with people who have something that you want always, Yeah.
Well, there was no foreplay there, Pete. We just got right in there.
Sorry. That's how I do it.
That's how I do it too, which is why I knew we were going to have some fun today. And so I want to talk about your formative years. I want to talk about how you became who you are. And, if anyone hops on your LinkedIn, they'll see it's pretty incredible. So regardless of selling this company quite successfully to Sprout Social, you had a medical device company that you sold to Boss Instruments. You had a skincare company. You had a water sports recreational business. You had a travel tech startup. So my first obvious question is, what did they feed you growing up?
I had a really successful grandfather who was an international businessman. I mean, this dude took his family business and turned it into something enormous. And all the men in the family and some of the women wanted to be like him. All I wanted to do was be him. I mean, I spent my entire life wanting to be him. And I always joke because I grew up in Indianapolis. My friends all wanted to be like basketball players or celebrities. I wanted to be like an international businessman. Like I'd go to the barber, I'm like, give me a tight cut, like that's who I wanted to be. No one in my family put pressure on me to feel that way or do that. I did it to myself. But I put a lot of self worth into success. That's how I viewed self worth. When you're successful, then you'll feel worthy. And I was also a child who had a very difficult time at school. I was a horrible student. I couldn't sit still. I was in trouble constantly. Listen, the adults around me, not my parents, but the adults around me really looked at me as a problem. And I probably was in their mind, right? And so what drove me was wanting to live up to my grandfather, which is impossible, wanting to prove all the adults that I'm not a shitbag. And throughout my Tagger experience, which is the last company I started and sold, I would wake up every single morning and I'd think about all the people who I wanted to prove wrong, which is so ridiculous, right? But it's a driver. And I think that no matter what's driving you, listen, I have gratitude for that. And did it cause a lot of internal turmoil in me? Yes. But did it get me up? Yes. Now, did those people care that I sold the company? No, no one cared, right? It's like, that's the funny part. But yeah, that's kind of what drove me throughout my years.
Yeah. So yeah, this learning that self-worth is a function of business success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got it. You weren't good in school, and you used the word casually, like not wanting them to see me as a shitbag. Did you learn literally that worth was a function of success, or is this an inferred or implied experience just by noticing?
No one sat me down and said that. My parents were like hardworking people. Like my father he was the hardest working man I ever met. And so I had that as a role model, like you work hard. That's just what you do in your life. And, my mom would sit me down and she'd be like, I don't care what you do. Be a forester, but be the best forester that you can be, And so what they drove me to do is just be the best I can and not be lazy, but just, meet my full potential. Now, I didn't see my full potential for most of my life because I had that internal dialogue that said, you're unworthy until you reach something. And so I thought that the path to worthiness meant I had to accomplish something when the reality is you already have that. You just don't see it in front of you,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but that was the identity I had created and that identity just ruled my life.
I had a similar experience. I didn't have a grandfather that was I don't know, tycoon or whatever your grandfather was, but I learned pretty literally, somewhat literally, definitely just by watching. I knew that when I was making people laugh or I was doing something that my parents thought was great in some way, like I received that positive feedback. I mean, and then kids, young people, we just learn to chase the dopamine. We learn to chase the approval. And so we all have some version of that story.
But did you have the feeling of self-worth as a child?
I mean, I don't know. The story I run with all the time, whether it's true or not, is that I needed to earn that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Now, did my parents love me? Without a doubt. Just, I imagine you would say your parents loved you, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it seems exactly. So self-worth, but was I enough just for being me? I never believed that,
Well,
I
and
had
does
to,
anyone? And does it even matter though? That's the thing. Like I know people who were like doted over and they had so much self-worth and they're still dealing with just different issues. And is that the lesson that you were here to learn?
right.
It was
Yeah.
mine. Yeah.
No, that's what's driven my whole life. That's why I'm a coach right now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
me having my reckoning and breaking free of the chains and shackles that kept me trying to continually earn success. I mean, we had a very similar path. And by the way, I don't think our path is all that unique. We all think we're unique snowflakes in the world, but I think most people have some version of the story. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it required me to fall on my face and deal with significant anxiety and panic stuff. And I had a reckoning similar to, I imagine, what your reckoning was, where I had to drastically wake up in life and see what was true and what the bullshit story I was telling myself my whole life.
Yeah. But you had that awakening. You had that, was it a moment where you just like woke up and you're like, oh my God, dude, like, holy shit, this is how I've been living my life? Or was it a more
Yeah.
gradual? Yeah.
No, there's two very distinct moments. First, so at the age of 22 or 23, I was a president of a company in San Diego. I was hell driven. Yeah, I'm an audiovisual company. I mean, I was doing everything I could to be recognized in some sort of business success. I was going to go to Seattle to open a new branch of the company, but before I was going to go up there, I always wanted to travel. And so I told the owner, CEO of the company, hey, I need to go take care of myself and go traveling by myself for a while before I go dedicate my life to this new business in Seattle. And at that point, man, I had this kick-ass loft in San Diego. I was driving a nice car. I had I had people
22.
flying in for, oh my gosh, like I needed to do that. And it was so fun. And
Yeah,
I remember this very distinctly. I'm in Europe and I'm walking around by myself with a backpack on. And I'm like, this doesn't feel all that cool. It doesn't feel like I thought I was going to feel. And I so distinctly remember I was on the coast of Italy. And I'm just meeting different backpackers here and there. And I met this one woman from India and I went for like an 8-hour walk with her. I never knew her. And during that walk, I realized I have everything I always thought I ever wanted in life. Like, look at me now. I'm on the coast, I'm like in this gorgeous place. Look at what my friends are doing back home. Like, fuck, like
I made it.
they are.
Yeah.
And I made it. And I was just miserable. I felt awful. Like I realized I am not a happy person. And that was the scariest realization of my life. I remember this distinctly. This is before I had a cell phone. I went to a payphone. I called the CEO, my buddy that owned the company, and I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm not coming back in 2.5 months. I don't know who I am. I'm fucking terrified. Sell my car, my company car. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'll let you know. And I ended up walking around for 5 months, and
Wow.
I was an anxious, panicky wreck. I mean, my identity was shattered, and I didn't know where I was going to wake up the next morning because I was just floating around in the world. And I had another similar story to that, actually in business school. By the way, Pete and I went to the same business school. We were a year apart, and we didn't even know each other there, which is hilarious. We met randomly many years later. But I had a very similar experience when I was, again, stepping into this hyper competitive, business school experience where I needed to be someone. And I was not the person that I thought I needed to be. And I had a pretty significant reckoning as I was entering into school as well.
Yeah. I mean, and which is a terrifying moment, both of those experiences, because to your point, it's a shattering of the identity that you've created. And when that
Yeah.
identity doesn't work anymore, dude, it is like death to yourself because that identity is a part of you, and it's terrifying, but you did it early, man. I mean, I'm impressed. I didn't do it till I was like 45. So I was living in fear up until that point.
Yeah.
And that fear is what drove me and woke me up every night. And it was miserable. It was there was fear of not being enough and fear of failure and fear of not being loved, fear of my kids failing out of school. Everything was fear. And I thought that was normal, And then when it shattered for me, man, it was like I was a newborn baby. And it was the greatest moment in my life.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. I can't wait to talk about that. But there's a couple other things I want to talk about before we go there. So, we're both fathers, and I am constantly thinking about, well, who's the guy I need to be to save, this is ridiculous, but it's what I think about, to save my daughter from the bullshit experience that I created for myself. And that is not for me to do. That's for my daughter to do.
Yeah.
I do think there's some responsibility that we can own being a parent and set up the conditions for our kids to enjoy life. But I'm just curious, I sit with the question sometimes, what could have been different in my life? How could have my parents shown up differently to potentially save me from my own experience? And again, I don't know if I would have wanted them to do that. I think I needed the pain to grow up and see and really begin to fall in love with myself and really step into the world. I needed that. I'm so grateful for it. But there is also the question, and the question I have for you is there something your parents could have said to you that they didn't say to you that could have made a difference?
No. I mean, honestly, listen, my parents were loving, but they were stern. Boundaries were set. You did not cross those boundaries. And so what I learned from that is responsibility and consequences. Like I understood that. No gray area. So I'm super appreciative of that. And they taught me that listen, there's no shortcuts in life, man. You take a shortcut, you're going to make the path longer, just period. And it's so true. There's just no shortcuts in life. But I also think that I don't care what my parents told me, I would have done the opposite. You can't tell someone their life lessons. You have to discover those on their own. And that's what I try not to do with my kids. I don't try to take away their life lessons. They're going to fail out of school. They're going to fail out of school. And what are they going to learn from that? A lot, dude. Failure is painful. And the great thing about it is you never have to feel that again if you don't want to, unless you keep falling on your face and hitting the same door. That's your lesson in life, And listen, it might be a little woo-woo and hokey for some people, but I 100% believe that. Listen, I chose my parents before I came to this life. I believe that we have a soul contract. I chose my children. I chose my wife. Like I chose all this because I needed to learn these lessons. And whether you believe that or not, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that it changes the framework that I operate with. And everything that my parents did that wasn't perfect, I'm appreciative of that now. Literally, I'm so thankful for that. And
Yeah.
at the time was I know. And I'm not saying like, listen, if you had horrible things that happened to you in your life, that's not what
Sure.
I'm talking about. Okay. There's the big trauma, little trauma. It doesn't matter how big the event was. It's just how you process that. I mean, you know that better than anyone else. Right. And so I've had experiences in my life that some people would just look at and be like, that was nothing. Dude, that stayed with me my entire life and it drove who I was. Like I still remember like a teacher in the 5th grade, what she did and what she said to me. And that stayed with me until I'm 50 years old. But I think that I wanted her to do that because it taught me a lesson and,
Yeah.
it drove my life.
Yeah. I agree. I think the process I needed to go through this past, I don't know, however many years it's been, for me, I had a lot of anger. And it's really easy for anyone to direct their upset towards someone else. It's
So who
because
was
of
your
you
anger
that
toward? Your
uh,
parent?
probably, yeah, my dad primarily. And that's a natural, normal response to go on the offensive and try to kill the saber-toothed tiger that you believe is threatening you. I think it's natural and normal, and I'm glad I had that experience too. But I think the real evolution for me was recognizing that my dad played his hand the best he could
Yes.
and really beginning to empathize with him and see, I could not have become who is what you were talking about. I could not have become the person I am today without that experience. And he loved me in the way he knew how to best. And that's for me, that was, and I think for most people that go through this sort of, let's just call it a hero's journey to be kind of cliche here, but to really let go of the anger and tether and blame that keeps us back there 40 years ago, to really appreciate, care for, and see the gifts in it and release him from my own suffering. It's suffering that I created, that I needed to create to get me exactly where I am now.
Yeah, which is beautiful, man. And it gives you permission to be a good father and a father who makes mistakes. Like I look at my dad and no, of course he wasn't like the perfect father. Like he had his stuff, but look at when he grew up and how he grew up. Like, he was the
Exactly.
first one to go to college in his family. And, he had he had the same job for 35 years, worked for the same bank and worked his way up, but had 35 years. And, he wanted to create a stable life for his family and he did that so well. But did he have the emotional tools and resources that I have? No. Would I have done the same thing he did if I was born at the exact same? Probably. Like I'm amazed that he was able to do what he even did. But I didn't feel that way my whole life. Like when I was in it
Uh-huh.
in high school, I felt the opposite. And it wasn't until I became a parent and I'm like, oh man, dude, you did pretty well. Like this is hard. We have 5 kids, dude. It's very challenging. And so I have a lot of gratitude for everything that he did, both good and bad, because I am who I am because of that. And I'm grateful. Yeah. So
All right, so let's shift to this, your awakening, your big let's call it a reckoning. I kind of like that word. So you worked your whole life, here you are, you got Tagger, you're in negotiation with Sprout Social, this thing's about to happen. Who's the first person you called when you knew the deal was going to go through? Like, what did you do as soon as you knew the deal was going to go through?
I called my wife. That was the first person I called,
Yeah.
and I didn't call anyone else. I didn't tell anyone else because I had seen this play out a couple times before. And I never wanted to be the one who said, oh, look what's happening. Because what am I doing when I do that? I'm seeking external validation. And most of the times it doesn't actually go through. So I didn't tell anyone until it was like literally the paper was signed. I didn't want to appear that like, because I wanted it so badly. But yeah, I didn't tell anyone, honestly.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to celebrate something like until there's ink on paper. I got that. But I also want to, so often I see these patterns in folks where we so deeply are yearning for others' approval, appreciation, whatever it is, that earned worth. And yet then we actually then don't want to talk about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I know you were waiting to get ink on the paper, but were you, out like letting everyone know, look at what I did after there was ink on the paper?
Once there was ink on the paper, 100%, dude. I mean, I
Oh,
was
you did
just
do
like,
that. Okay.
oh yeah. Like I posted everything. I mean, I was just like telling everyone and yes, because I was seeking a lot of external approval and I was
Uh-huh.
needing
Okay.
people to tell me how amazing I am. because, I felt like I had zero worth in people's mind until I did something amazing in my life. Yeah. So
And what did you
bipolar.
imagine? What okay? What did you imagine that would have felt like? Maybe you were, I don't know, like I don't know how much you thought ahead about that very specific moment, but what were you imagining this was going to feel like to have finally built and sold this company?
I had been thinking about this moment for the entire span of my lifetime because this was the moment. Because you mentioned all my other companies. Yeah, I had other companies. None of them were that successful. Yeah, we sold a couple, and it wasn't like life changing event until Tagger. Up until the point of selling the company, I literally thought that people would like hold me up on their shoulders and parade me around. Like, not literally, but like, I felt like people would love me more and have so much respect for me. I mean, it sounds insane thinking back on that, but that's how little I thought of myself and how much I needed people to reinforce their belief in me. And what's funny is I had already been doing the work about a few years prior to selling the company. That was like the first spiritual awakening I ever had. And then I did a lot of work thinking that I had solved a lot of this. And then when I sold the company and everything that I thought I would get from that sale, none of it came true. Dude, I fell into the darkest depression I had ever experienced. It shattered me, you know, similar to your experience when you're walking through Europe and you're just like, who am I? What is this life? Yeah, I hated myself.
I hated myself. So, wow, it's one thing to be shattered, another thing to hate yourself.
Yeah. Because throughout my life, like I wanted to be perfect. That was it. Like, like I wanted, if I got upset about something that I knew I probably shouldn't get upset about, I would get mad at myself for getting mad at myself for getting mad at myself. And when I sold the company and I was feeling depressed, that's a feeling that I never wanted to feel. And I wouldn't even call it depression because that was weakness. And I never wanted to be weak. And my entire life was just like, be tougher, meaner. And, but on the inside, I was just this soft, gooey, jelly kid, like this little boy. And I was really mad at myself for feeling that way. I was embarrassed. Like, what an asshole. You sell your company for a boatload of money and you're depressed. It's like, what is wrong with you? And so there's a lot of self-hatred within that. Yeah. And just waking up and realizing that no one cares. Like literally my kids were like, what's for breakfast? They did not care. My wife was like, great. Okay, what are we doing today? My parents were proud of me and my siblings were, but it's like, no one's throwing a party for me. It's like, no one cares, and that was shattering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here you are, money in the bank, check. I've done the thing that I always wanted to do, and I'm shattered.
Yes.
And so you then embarked on your own journey to put the pieces back together, and that's what your book, The Remembering, right? That's what it's called.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you want more than this interview, folks, check out Pete's book. I want to talk a little bit about what you did to put those pieces back together.
Yes.
And so what I do know, we talked a little bit about this, and there's a number of different things. You seem to be very curious, very experimental. I know there's trips into foreign sweat lodges and embracing breath work and somatic healing and coaching and psychedelics and deep introspective work. You're doing all these things. When did you first begin to see past this old illusion you were in, this old story you were in?
So a couple years before I sold the company, I went down to Brazil because my wife during COVID had created a drinking problem. Like it was awful. And she had never really drank before, but she went to rehab for 30 days, came out. Her therapist was like, listen, I'm not helping you. And you have 5 kids. I'm going to say something pretty radical, but I think you should do iboga, which is a plant medicine found in Gabon, Africa. And it's like the Mount Everest. You trip for 24 hours, 2 nights in a row. I mean, it is like horrible, right? But he said, you'll never drink again for the rest of your life. She was desperate and she said, will you come and do this with me? And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Are you kidding me? I was like deep in control and fear at this moment. But I said, I'll go with you to make sure you don't get killed by these crazy people. Go down there. You have to do a week's worth of preparation to prepare yourself for iboga because it is taxing on your system. The first thing we did was a sweat lodge at Temescal. And I had a spiritual experience, dude. I left that sweat lodge in the middle of it and I went somewhere in the universe and I saw this Native American. He rode up on me on a horse, looked at me and said, fear is worse than death. And that is why I fear no death. And at that moment, dude, I just saw my life shatter. I had been driven by fear. Every decision was based off of fear, running from the fear of not being successful, just everything. And I left that Temescal and everything had changed instantly. And lot of other things happened during that trip, but I did iboga, and it just opened my eyes to everything. Iboga is this thing where it shows you where you're messing up in your life. And it's called the Stern Father. And it shows you where you're messing up in your life. And then it gets into your DNA, and you can't do anything but change that. There's no like, "Oh, maybe I won't do that anymore." You won't do that anymore. You just can't. And then that set me on this path. Now, when I came back from Brazil, those voices in my head, all the, "Hey, you're such a shitbag. Everyone thinks you're a shitbag." Dude, it was nonstop. And I had never really heard them. I just thought it was me. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's not me, but I can't make them stop. And then I went on this kind of 1.5 year long process of trying to destroy that part of me. I call it the man, the one that drives me and tells me what a shitbag I am and tries to protect me. But I literally tried to like destroy that part of myself by brutalizing myself, like retreat after retreat. And just like, if someone said like 5 people in the world have done this, I would be like, sign me up, and I did that for a long time until I realized, listen, that is me, dude. Like, why am I trying to kill myself? It's so stupid. Just integrate, learn to love that part of me, which took a long time to do. And then I thought I was all good. And then we sold the company and I fell into depression. I'm like, wait, I did all this work. Where is all that, inventory of goodwill? But all of it was gone.
There's something that I want to talk about that you just mentioned that I think is really, really important for people to hear. This trying to kill the voice. I see this a lot. I think there's actually a lot of like thought leaders that talk about this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people talk about saboteurs. And I think a lot of people have it wrong, at least in my experience. There's this idea that you can't fundamentally change what you can't first accept about yourself, which I think is you had to learn the hard way. Like if we sweep those voices under the rug, in my experience, those voices just get louder and louder and louder and louder.
Correct.
And ultimately,
it's a balloon underwater. If you push it down, eventually that balloon's going to go flying up and explode out. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And those voices are instructive. And, I love, we can just call it parts work in therapy and coaching. There's IFS, internal family systems, and different coaching parts work. Yeah, I love it too. And they're just parts of us that were born into our lives to help us stay safe. And what they don't necessarily realize is that we're not 10 years old anymore. We're 40 or 50. Yet they still are thinking we are 10 years old and we need to be as good as our grandfather, otherwise we're not worthy. And so you're a shitbag, do this better, do this better, do this better. And for me, the equation really is, am I willing to love and support those parts and show them the safety that they're after? Like, can I show them what's true in the world and not shun them? It's like kicking a kid when he's down. Like, that doesn't help. Mm-hmm. But if you can tell your scared kid, actually, hey, let's get on the floor and turn a flashlight on and look under the bed and see if there's a monster really there. Oh, there's no monster there, And I think that work is so critical to deal with those voices. So I love hearing that you probably muscled through like I did, like a lot of people did, but it seems like you learned to sort of embrace those voices. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Listen, that is a journey and a process. And I do think that everyone is different. And, what works for you might work for a lot of people. It might not work for some. And so it's a process of exploration. And so, to me, it's like, why are those voices there? Like, I think it's so helpful to go back and really understand where those voices came from, because it's a habit. And what is a habit? Something that you've been doing for a long time, and you do it because it's super efficient. I have those voices in my head that tell me like, hey, this person hates you, right? I don't know if that person hates me. So why do I feel that way? Well, 2 reasons. One, when I was a child, right, something happened and I felt people don't like me and blah, 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 right? The other thing is that like the left brain is there to make up stories. That is why it's there, okay? And it's there for survival. And so that voice in your head that says that person hates me, it's trying to protect you from that person hurting your feelings or whatever it is. And it was so important back in the days when we were like cavemen, right? Because as you're walking through the bush, that left brain's like, hey, there's probably a lion over there. 95% of the time, there is no lion over there. 95% of the time, that person doesn't hate you. But if you didn't have that, then you'd be walking around the bush going like, oh, there's no lions anywhere. And then you would be eaten, right? And so it's an important part. So just understanding how the brain works, why it's working. And, I got really mad at that part of me. I was like, get rid of that. Well, don't get rid of that, dude. That's your survival technique. Like without that, you're going to die. But then I went back and I did the work to really understand, why do I feel that way? And I did a lot of psychedelics and I did a lot of hard, like retreats, just brutal retreats. And I know what I came from with that is yes, there was things that happened in my life that were challenging and I bucketed them under this big trauma thing, right? And it drove me for most of my life. And then I just realized over time, like, listen, I'm thinking this way because an 8-year-old self of me felt that way. And the event that actually happened isn't nearly as bad as I think it is now. We create these bonker stories about something that happened, 40 years ago. It didn't happen like that, but I've created the story. And so now I realize that I have a choice. I have a choice to approach that situation this way or that way. And I just, I Joe Dispenza says, like, don't let a conscious thought go unconscious. Like, I am so conscious of the way I think. And if it's a negative thought, I'm just not going to go there. And I literally have a mantra. When I feel something or hear something, like you have those repetitive things, like you have the same negative thought over and over and over again. I've been having it my whole life. The minute that comes in, I just go, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. And it's a repetition, a mantra. And I'll say it 50 times. And then all of a sudden the brain's just like, well, that's a waste of time. I'm not going to do that anymore. It's a conscious decision. So to answer your question, I don't think that there's this silver bullet where you go back and you heal that child and then boom, you're solved. I think it is a constant practice of saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm going to choose to have positive thoughts and not negative ones. That's my belief.
That's interesting. We have so much in common. We've got two different strategies around this.
Yeah.
So those negative thoughts that I have, the mental model I use to support myself, which works, and it's not the right way, it's just the thing that's been working for me for a long time, is seeing those. Well, we both agree there's scared parts. There's a part of us that's scared, and they're usually a young part. And what I do is I actually give that part more voice and I parent it. And I ask, what are you scared about?
Yeah.
I want to know, like, really, you're scared. There's a part of me that's scared. What's going on? Tell me all about it.
Dude, you seem really scared. What's going on with you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that.
What I do is I type like, hey, Clay, you seem pretty fired up right now. What's going on? And I will let him type right back to me. And I'm like, yeah, that seems pretty scary. Like, it's literally like a parent-child relationship. And I help him see the world a little bit more clearly. And for me, this is where I want to go next. We deal with what we need to deal with, and we form different relationships with these old scared parts. I'm curious. So I guess you already answered the question. I was going to ask, how and when does old Pete show up still now after all this work?
All the time, all the time. And that's the thing. It's like, dude, just because you do the work and you have all this stuff, it comes up every single time. Like, listen, I'm a human being, and the minute they stop coming up, like, you're at my funeral, I'm going to be dead. Because that is the condition of the human experience, right? Now, do they come up in a way that they used to, where what my wife and I call hijacking, where we just get hijacked for a week or a month or a year? No, but it still comes up. Like, I always joke, like, if you see me cleaning the kitchen, dude, just grab me and be like, what's happening with you? Because when my life feels out of control, I try to control all the little things I can, like literally cleaning the kitchen. And so those are the warning signs for me now. As soon as I start doing something or feeling a certain way, it's like a street sign flashing like, hey, dude, look over there. And so I work with this guy, Jim George, he's just a legend. And he's a coach, but he's like the smartest guy I've ever met. But he teaches stillness, which is it's just a breath, and I don't need to do breath work for an hour. I can do breath work for like 2 seconds. Literally, it's just taking these big, deep breaths, slowly letting them out. And that fear that I have, it goes away. Now, if it doesn't go away, that's intuition. And that's telling me, okay, there's something to worry about and there's something you need to focus on. But all the bullshit goes away. So, that's kind of the practice that I try to do is just, hone in on that intuition. And that's, to me, the journey of life and business and being a human being it's the journey of intuition. Is this fear good for me or is this fear bad for me? Because there is good fear. Like, dude, you shouldn't jump in a ring with a professional MMA fighter. You will get killed, But other fear is, it's just, you have to get super still, quiet the mind to really see the difference between the two.
Yeah. An alternative might be, how is this fear here for me?
Yep. Okay. So what does that mean?
Well, good, bad. Like, how do we determine what good or bad is? There's a construct. There's a story around what good or bad is. The fear is here. Here I am. It's March 6th, 11:51, and there's fear here. Like, there's clouds in the sky. There's, it's like you talk about getting still, like in this moment, what's here now? Fear is here. Maybe there's sadness here. Maybe there's an itch on my right shoulder. What's this here for me? Am I willing to be with life as it is without struggling against it? Am I willing to get my learnings that are here for me all the time?
Yes. Yeah. And the fear is like the most amazing thing. Anger is an amazing thing. They're all really good emotions. It's pointing you in the right direction. But, what comes along with fear is tension in the body. Right. And so,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can breathe. And I'm like, but still my solar plexus is like a ball of knots, or my shoulders are tight as can be.
Yeah.
And so, you should try this tonight when you're feeling that anxiety. Or I do it first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I have anxiety. And then I'm like, I do my breath. And then I'm like, wait, what am I anxious about? Nothing. It's a habit. It's a pattern. It's just like what my mind automatically does. And I'm like, my day is going to be awesome. Like, what do I care about? But try it when you're breathing tonight, when you feel some anxiety, identify your body, like scan your body and feel like, okay, I have tension in my shoulders, my stomach. And you do a breath, but you start with the belly and you push it out, go to the top. And I know you know this stuff, but go to the belly, bring it up to the top, and then you slowly let it out. And when I say, like Jim does this with me, you let it out for a minute. It's like forever. And then you do it again. Do it like 2 or 3 times. But every time you're exhaling, you're releasing your shoulders. And then next time you're releasing your belly. And next time you're releasing your jaw, like you have all these muscles in your face. So that your mouth is literally just opened up. And then tell me what you have fear about and tell me what's bothering you.
I love that. Yeah.
And if it's true and it's something that you need to pay attention to, it will be there. And if it's some bullshit that your brain's just doing, it's going to go away.
It'll go away. I think that's awesome. I'm thrilled you shared that practice with us, and hopefully people listening will give that a shot. I haven't done that exact practice. I do a lot of different somatic stuff, but I'm gonna give that particular practice a shot this afternoon.
Well, and that's the thing, dude. To me, that is the journey too. I love, give me a new, you taught me so many cool prompts, dude, that I'm using all the time within like, when I facilitate groups or whatever, like you gave me the greatest prompt in the world. And that's the whole thing.
Really? What is that?
It was, if you knew me right now, right? What I think I've adjusted just a little bit, but what was that prompt that you did?
Yeah. And that was taught to me a number of years ago by some great friends and colleagues. Yeah. If you were to really know me right now, you would know.
Yes.
Especially if you get a group of people using that prompt, it's a way for us to really connect. Can we take down our masks for a minute because we care about each other and we care about our connection? Can we just let each other in? So if you were to really know me right now, and you can get even more specific, what my body is expressing right now is, or the body sensations I'm experiencing is, whatever it might be, the emotions that are here are, the thinking that's here now is, or you can get rid of all that and just offer a very candid, open check-in. And I think it's the most beautiful gift you can share with someone you care about. I really care about our relationship and our connectedness. I want to remove whatever barriers may be here that I'm putting up that could limit our potential in relationship. So I'm just if you were to really know me right now, you would know, and then whatever it is.
Yeah. And then it's funny, we all put up these masks, and we want everyone to think that we're like so successful and great and have it all together. And then when you start to get really vulnerable with people, like my wife always makes fun of me because I'm an open book. I'll just say anything, which gets me in trouble sometimes. But, the people who are super honest with me and vulnerable, dude, I love those people. It's like they're relatable. And, I think that's a good challenge for people to, people are like, oh, I'm an open book. It's like, really? Everything is open? And it's like, well, I would never say that, but, and I'm like, I just try it. See, because people are going through the same shit you are. And,
So let's talk about that, because you've got a company now, Evolvewell. Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about some exercises you were doing with your team the other day. And in my world, well, not my world, in my experience too, I love the idea, who's the person I need to show up as to invite the other to show up the way I'd like them to. Mm-hmm. So if you want someone else to be open and candid and take their mask down, well, how do I need to show up to invite that in? And in the workplace, good luck trying to get your staff to do that if you're not willing to do it as a leader.
Yeah.
good luck. It ain't going to happen. I mean, all the fear, all of like, this is just our basic biology is going to get in the way. It's too dangerous. It's, I'm going to protect my security and my approval and I'm going to be protective. This isn't a conscious thought, but employees are constantly knowingly or unknowingly trying to stay alive and stay in good graces with their bosses. That's just how it is. But guys like you that have learned what you've learned and walked the walk can model the behavior that leads to the culture that you really appreciate and crave. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're doing with that to create a new kind of culture with Evolvewell that maybe didn't exist with your past companies.
Yeah, and I can't take full credit for this. This is Alex and I do this together, and
of course.
he's so good at this stuff. But the fact that we both want this, because we've both been through the grind of a startup where he had one as well. And listen, it was all about being successful. And if you were in my way, dude, I'd run your ass over, because it wasn't just about being successful in the business. It was about my identity, right? And so you were threatening my existence if you got in my way. We wanted to do something completely different. And you're right. Listen, if you want to understand why your employees behave a certain way, all you have to do is look at the top. However that person's behaving and what they think and how they act, that's how your employees are going to behave as well. And so we want a place where people feel safe, right? And not like safe, like, like goofy safe. I'm talking like safe to show up as themselves. And I don't want work and my life to be two weird separate things where I love my life and I hate work, or I hate work and I love my life. Like, we want it just to merge. Like, you should have fun all the time. And we have this thing about personal growth before profits. Like, I want to see my employees grow more than I care about profits. That doesn't mean we're not doing the right things in order to be successful. We are. Like, you have to do that, right? But can we focus on the well-being of our employees? And that doesn't mean like give them a gym membership and all these things. It means like what we've been talking about for the last hour, like get inside of themselves, have them start to awaken to who they are and that voice in your head, like everyone talks about, like Michael Singer. I love the dude. He talks about the first step of the spiritual path is realizing that the voices in your head are not you, right? And so that's what we do, right? It's like constantly. So what do we do? Like, I was in Serbia last week working with our team, and we would spend the first hour and a half doing breath work. Hour and a half, the whole company lying down, doing breath work for an hour and a half, which is hard if you've never done breath work before. It's a lot. And then we get into a circle and we start talking about a prompt that I just throw out there, right? We did this breath work about gratitude, just constant gratitude. You're thinking about it when you're doing breath work. And the prompt was, what is a door you keep hitting every single day? Like in your life, you look back and you're like, I keep hitting that door that you're grateful for. I'm grateful that I've been hitting that door because it wakes me up to realize what my lesson is and what I need to change. And dude, these are people who, like Serbians, they don't really speak emotions. So you ask, what's an emotion? They'll be like, I don't know what emotion is. You can't make them stop talking. Like, at first they were kind of shy. Now it's like emotions are coming up. They're talking about themselves. But to your point, Clay, like, I'm the first one that goes, and I talk about my shit and what it is. And it gives them permission to do the same. And it's funny that the next circle, I'm planning on going first. There's like 4 people who'll be like, I'll go first, which is,
oh my gosh, I love it. But hold on, Pete. You can't tell me you're spending 2 hours doing all this woo-woo bullshit at the beginning of an offsite with your team. That's ridiculous.
Not only that, Clay, we're doing 2 hours of bullshit, and then we're working for another maybe hour and a half, 2 hours. Then we're doing more bullshit. We're doing more breath work, and then we would do maybe an hour's meditation. You get more work done because, listen, this is our development team, right? And so it's brainstorming. In brainstorms, what happens every single time? You have 1 or 2 people that are so precious about their ideas, and they're like, well, if you don't like my idea, then I'm just going to sit back here and gloat, You have none of that. When people are so dialed in and literally they're so still and they tap into that emotion and they see each other tapping into emotion. Dude, no one has a bad idea. All we care about is how do we get to the best idea? So the ego, which is driving most people all the time, the ego is gone. Now, after 2 hours, the ego starts creeping back in. People get a little tired. Great, we go do breath work again, or we do a meditation again. And that ego goes back down, and then we go back and do it. And we do that for 5 days straight,
I mean, it's why we hang out. I love what you're up to with this company. and
Yeah.
just the
And
culture.
listen, we're constantly adjusting, and maybe it's not for everyone. And it's harder when you have a really big company, it's hard to do that. But,
It is.
but if I didn't believe in this stuff, no one would believe in it in the company. And
Without a doubt.
it's the culture that we built from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And people are into it. So I don't know. People like to be heard.
I,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. It's all we want. We just want to be heard and acknowledged.
But I feel
Like,
like
I
you're at
mean,
the forefront of this. Like this is like you're a coach, you're a business coach. I mean, this is what you're guiding people towards, though, within themselves. And then how do you integrate this stuff into a organization? You did for our company, right? I mean, you came in and led circles. Do you see the result with these people, and are they implementing it within their organizations?
yeah, I mean, that's why I do this. The only reason I do this is because all these prompts, all these kinds of activities, they've fundamentally helped me transform my life as they've helped you transform your life. So they're deeply personal to me. And it's okay if you don't want to do it. That's fine. I'm going to go hang out with this person over here that wants to do it. It's great. Like, not everyone's going to be into this. That's cool. I'm okay with it. I don't go around like saying my way of being, leading a company is the right way to lead a company. I don't want to do that either. But yeah, I just feel like the luckiest guy in the world that I get to bring forward my own experience from the people that have taught me. I melt when I hear about the connection that these Serbian guys that have never been able to talk about their emotions, and now they can't wait. Like, oh my God, like what's better than that to create real connection with people? It's just, I love it. That's why I do what I do. And, I got to be a sales guy sometimes. The more the longer I've been doing this, luckily for me, there's been success and people kind of tell their friends about this kind of stuff, which is really cool. But it requires someone at the top first to believe in it, have conviction, and go first. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yep, agree.
And so, and oftentimes, honestly, I've had plenty of CEOs or ever call me to work with their middle management team, and I don't want to do that unless you're willing to go first. I'm not going to do it.
Because if you're not driving it, middle management's not going to do it. Yeah.
Part of it's self-serving. Like, well, no, I'd rather I'm in the world to help CEOs and founders. I just love that because they can make massive impact. But also, it's going to be a waste of your time and money for me to work with these folks if you're not willing to play ball either. So no one's going to win if we take that approach.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not telling, like you just said, I'm not saying this is for every company or every person. I mean, like the reason why it's for me and the reason why it's for you is because I love being at the center of transformation. Dude, there's nothing that gets me more excited than watching someone have a breakthrough. Or like, I love when I find someone who is at their darkest of places. Like that, just like, I get so jealous of them because I know that they're on the brink of something extraordinary. Like our greatest transformations happen when we're stretched beyond our limits, and it literally drives me crazy. I love it. It's like the coolest thing in the world because those are the moments in my life that just blew my mind. And when people have those awakenings, man, and if I can be any part of that, just even a witness of that, then that's really what drives me. And so I really just use business as a way to be part of that. I think ultimately, like what my end game is, I want to like put on retreats eventually. Once Evolvewell is over and, we sell it or we grow or I get a replacement in 10 years or whatever it is, I want to put on retreats and bring in all these amazing facilitators that I've worked with throughout the world and just put on these gangster experiences that stretch people beyond what they think they can do,
Yeah. So. I mean, that's so cool. I thought of this morning. I don't know you said something to me once that I really, really, really appreciated. This was, I don't know, 6 months, 10 months ago. We were talking about Evolvewell. So I'm an advisor to Evolvewell. I help how I can with your company. And we were sort of negotiating what my involvement looks like. And I think, I don't know, without getting into a lot of detail, and frankly, I don't even remember a lot of detail. I was actually wanting a little bit more. Like I was like, I want to play. I want in. Give me more. And there was something, I don't remember the exact specific content that we were talking about, but you said something that I just so appreciated. You said, and I think it was a coach of yours that told you this. You said, Clay, and tell me, I'm going to get this wrong, but you said it's like I have this backpack on and it's full of rocks. And I know that if I put an extra rock in, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to slow me down. And I just am really conscious about the rocks I put in my backpack, what I carry on. And right now, this thing is not a priority. It's not something that's in service of what I'm wanting now. And at first, I was just like, yee. I can go through that little bit of like an ouch. But then like 2 seconds later, I'm like, gosh, I fucking appreciate that. So appreciate Peter, like being on point, being really clear with me, not bullshitting me, saying yes when he means yes, saying no when he means no. It meant a lot to me, even though I had that immediate ouch right when it occurred. But I just think though, I would love for you to share that lesson in your words, using your language, because I think others would really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to thank you because you create an environment that allows people to be really honest and upfront with you because you do that and you value that. And I felt comfortable enough to do that, And so I work with this woman, Conchetta, who has been a coach of mine for a long time. And I talk about her in the book. She's a somatic therapist. And yes, it is. I'm wearing a backpack. Everyone is. I start loading rocks into my backpack. There comes a time when that backpack knocks me over because it's too heavy. And that's when I like blow up at my kids or I blow up my wife or, life becomes unmanageable. Everyone wants something and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's weird because a week ago, everyone wanted something and it was fine. Like I could handle it all. But there was a tipping point where something happened where I took on too much responsibility and then I tip over. And I'm so conscious of not doing that now. And so I'm so focused on the rocks that I can put in my backpack that are really good for me, that help me and help the other person. But it's not taking on too much responsibility and too many things where I lose myself. And yeah, I'm a visual person. So I literally, when we're talking, I picture the backpack. I'm like, where am I? It's like almost at the top and I can't. Then I start removing responsibility, removing rocks from my backpack, which can be off-putting for some people, but it's the only way that I can stay centered and grounded because I'm a pendulum, man. In the past, I would just go from one extreme to another. I'll take on everything and then I crumble and then I take on nothing. And then and I'm just like, how do I just kind of be super? And Alex taught me that. Alex is so good too about, he's so intentional about what he takes on and he'll be upfront with you. He's like, I can't do that right now. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never been able to say that, but it's been a journey to be able to do that and really understand what those rocks are.
Yeah. So, I just love it. It's a practice of mine. I've never used that analogy before. I'm a recovering people pleaser. When your worth, yeah, right. If your worth is all tied up in success and how people think of you, well, now you're a people pleaser. So it's not intuitive to say, sorry, my backpack's full. Like it's a pretty fucking big deal for someone that had your background. So where do you get the courage is for people listening to this to say, no, I'm full right now. Like, where does that come from?
Look, I work with a lot of people, man, and I do it because these people they have something I want and I listen to what they say. And, Jim does this amazing thing where he asks one simple question. Is that true? And so why would I take on another rock from somebody? Well, because they're going to hate me or they're going to be disappointed in me or, literally the minute someone tells me a problem, my mind starts going, how do I solve that problem for them? They're not asking me to solve a problem, but I'm trying to solve their problem. Yeah. Why am I doing that? People please or whatever it is. And then I pause and I say, is that true? If I say this to Clay, is he going to hate me and never talk to me again? And I'm like, no, I don't know that. How would I ever know that? I'm not Clay. I'm not dude, we're not even the same species, by the way. Like, call us both human, but how you think and your nervous system, it is so different than mine. And when you say a word, I don't even know what that word actually means to you because I'm not you. I can't know what you're thinking because I'm not Clay. And so how can I even know how you're going to react? And so by me pausing and saying, is that true? And the answer is always no. I have no idea how Clay will react. Well, try it. Well, if I try it, he's going to hate me. Is that true? No, I don't know that. We'll try it. So that's what goes through my head constantly. And then I just started practicing it, man. And people aren't looking for you to solve their problems. They would love it. And if you do, then they'll just keep coming back to you to solve your problems. But that's a vicious cycle. So I just stopped doing it. That's it.
I love it. I think it's just so cool.
It's as simple as like, is that true? Look.
Yeah. And by the way, even if it is true, even if no, that person's going to be deeply upset with me and not want to be my friend anymore. Well, we're still at choice. Okay. Is their happiness my responsibility? Is that for me to own?
100%. And I think for you and for me, for most of our lives, it was true. Yes. It is for me to own, but no, man, I got enough shit. I don't need to take on someone else's shit. And that's not selfish. It's not selfish at all. Listen, everyone, don't feel bad about somebody. It's like they chose this life. That's where they're supposed to be. And it's not your job to come and save them, or because then you'd be taking away the life lesson that they're trying to learn, that they're supposed to learn, so.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like how might this rejection, not even rejection, but how might me taking care of myself be the best thing for that person to hear right now?
Like when you're on an airplane, what do they say? Put on your mask before you help anyone else. Like that's another, I have mantras that just like hit me all the time.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, put on my mask first. Like, and it's not being selfish. It's just being like, if I die, I can't help this person. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I've got two more topics I thought would be fun to talk about. And we talked a little bit about parenthood. You got 5 kids. And I would imagine 10 years ago, your vision of fatherhood or parenthood would be different than it is today, as it would for anyone. But how has your awakening really affected how you show up as a parent?
Well, my awakening was mostly about my parenting, to be honest with you. That was a big piece of it. When I did iboga, that was where I was messing up in my life, and I was driven by fear of my kids not being successful and stuff like that. My son, who's now in college, and it's just a crusher. All my kids are crushers. They're so awesome. They're crushers because I've changed my perspective of what that actually means, and I changed my expectations. But when I did iboga, my son was having a hard time in high school. No kidding, dude. His mom went to rehab. He had just got through COVID. Like, he should be having a hard time. And I was pushing him in a way that probably wasn't very helpful. I thought I was being helpful, but I was not giving him, he needed love. That's all he needed. And I was trying to be, come on, dude, you got this. Let's crush life, like, stupid. And when I did iboga, the visions are as real as this. It's so wild. But I saw his face in front of me. And the way it works is you don't even need to like see or hear anything. You just see his face and you just know, oh yeah, that kid just needs love. That's it. Well, I'm screwing up. And then there's a scene of the two of us on the bluffs near our house. And I'm standing there and I'm just like, dude, I just love you so much. I'm so sorry, and I'm crying and he's crying. And it just looped over and over and over again. Like when you're doing psychedelics, you have that loop. And it was so much for me to handle. I was like, I can't do this anymore. You got to stop it. And it wasn't until I fully understood that it just stopped. And then went to something else. When I got home from Brazil, I drove home, picked him up, drove straight to the bluffs, and we had the exact same conversation. And from that moment on, how I see my children and how I behave and completely changed. All I do is give them love. Of course I give them boundaries like this, that is the most loving thing you can do. But
sure.
But man, I just love my kids so much. And I just want them to know that they're loved. That's it. Unconditionally loved. Yes. When you screw up, I'm going to be there and I'm going to tell you, listen, here's the consequences. But yeah, it's just, I don't have a fear of them doing anything. When you go through hardship, like my son went through something challenging recently. I've never met anyone who's gone through something challenging where their life is not exponentially better. And that's how my kids see the world now. And it's just beautiful. Let me ask you a question. So yeah. when you think about parenting, what do you think is the biggest challenge? Because, is it expectations that you put on people, your children? Is it the fact that when they fail or when they do something wrong, we feel like it's a reflection on us? Like, do you think there's a common theme where parents kind of get off the train?
I mean, I think there's lots of different things, but parents are just so goddamn scared, including myself. It's normal. We love our kids so much, but we also love the vision of our family so much. And all of a sudden, if our kids start showing up differently than the way we imagine them to show up, a lot of people struggle with, well, then who am I? When I'm hanging out with my friends at the country club, if my family looks different than what I wanted my family to look like. I mean, there's a lot of that in the world. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that gets between us and having really healthy relationships with our kids is our own fear. Mm-hmm. Not their fear.
Yeah.
Our own fear. It's like, oh my God, my kid's not going to, and even if it isn't about our vision, like, oh my God, my kid's not going to get into the school they want to get into. And so we scramble and try to save them, et cetera, or whatever it is. Like what you just said, your strategy right now, it sounds like is, I just am going to love my child. And that's different than trying to save them because I'm scared.
I'm going to hold them responsible for what they do, which is loving, I mean, I'm going to be firm, but loving, and I know it's funny, like all my friends the friends who are the most like helicopter parents who are just constantly like, oh my God, what are these kids doing? They were nut jobs when they were younger, like complete nut jobs. And I'm always like, dude, your kid's like a rock star compared to you when you were that age. You were like a drug dealer. Like you were like a nut. Yeah. And so, but we forget, I feel like everyone forgets what it means to be a child. And, there was this funny comedian I was watching recently, and he was called in to the principal's office because his kindergartner, did something. And they go, Mr. So-and-so, we have a big problem with your child. And he's like, okay, well, just real quickly, is he still 6? Just to be clear, is he still 6 years old? It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I mean, that is the point of being a child, is to mess up and learn from your mistakes. But, I think the whole schooling system today, they want these wallflowers who are like perfect little kids. No, dude, kids are supposed to mess up. That's why they are children. That's why they're at school. That's why they're in this life. Learn your lessons and don't make them feel like horrible people for being a normal 6-year-old, I've yeah, I have a lot of anger about that, because when I was a kid, that was my experience. And then my sons, man, they were just treated so poorly because they were me, and we'd be called into the principal's office. I would come in as a hostile parent, like just being like, what do you have to say to me? Because I was them. I felt like I was that grade schooler sitting in front of the principal, but I was an adult, and I could tell the principal to go fuck himself. So, but that was my own inner child who was wounded, it was just, that's.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're just reflections of us. I was thinking about this morning. I get so, when I can get scared and sad when I realize that I'm asleep at the wheel doing the same shit to my daughter that was done to me. I'm saying that word loosely. But like with my daughter, I notice I can get really reactive when I hear her like ask for something that so easily she can just do it herself. Like, she's 5 feet away from the sink. Like, hey, can you give me a glass of water? I'm like, get your ass off the fucking couch and get yourself some water. Like, that's the first thing that goes through my mind. The trigger there is just because I learned a long time ago not to rely on anyone, because it was safest not to rely on anyone. I'm going to be incredibly self-sufficient. So there I am putting my own bullshit on her. And then when I wake up and I realize that, and it's like, oh, Clay, you're such a dick. Can you just get her a glass of water? And it's like that kind of stuff. There's so much growth for me in being a father. There's no one way to be a dad or a parent, and we're all going to screw it up. And just like the grace I've learned to give my dad, it's like, listen, I'm just doing the best I can. And I like to think I'm being as aware or as conscious. I'm probably a lot more aware of how I'm showing up than a lot of other dads. So like, good job, Clay. You're doing okay.
You're doing incredibly well. Conchetta, the woman I work with, I would do something like that, and then I would feel bad about it. And I'd be like, oh man, I'm such an asshole. What the hell?
Yeah.
And, Conchetta, I'm like, you never get mad. She's like, I get mad all the time. What are you talking about? She's like, I'm working with you. So of course I'm not gonna get mad at you, And I'm like, she's like, the difference between you and me though, is I don't get mad at myself when I get mad. And I'm like, oh my God. That is the mind blowing. She's like, because I realized if I got mad, that was an emotion that was normal. And I'm not going to get angry at myself for doing that, And that was a big shift in me. So when I do something with my kids, and, I'm the same way. Like, my kids are so lazy, like, they're like, can you go get me water? I'm like, get your ass up and go get yourself, And then I'll be like, okay, that wasn't very nice. But I'll go back to them and be like, listen, I'm sorry that I got frustrated, but I got frustrated because now you're lazy. It's like, get off your ass and go do it. Say it in a nicer way. But that's a big piece for me, is like not getting mad at myself for doing something.
Yeah. And I think those instances, it's like, if you got a lemon, make some lemonade, right? So it's, it opens up an opportunity for me to out myself with my daughter. Like, hey, yeah, I was just a dick. And maybe I wouldn't use that word, but you know what I mean? Here's what's going on for me, and I just love you so much. And there's probably a little more of me for me to continually do with my daughter around that. But it opens up possibilities. Whenever there's some friction, can I just get clear about what's driving me and share that with the other person because I care about them? That's the same thing with executive teams that I like to teach all the time. Like, just out yourself because you care about the other person.
Fear was driving my parenting skills and my parenting way of being. And my kids thought I was like this perfect dude. And my wife finally came to me and they're like, our kids think that you're like this perfect person. Like, I know you, you're not. You're like the opposite of that. Like, and they don't know who you are. And they're not being themselves around you because they're trying to be this thing. And I was like, oh my God, that like, it literally stabbed me in the heart because I was like, my kids don't know who I am, you know? And I want them. Now, why don't they know who I am? Well, because I'm afraid that if they know what a shitbag I am, they're going to become a shitbag themselves, you know? And that was my thinking. And then I just like, I literally, my mom had saved every report card I ever had. And I had it for some reason. It was like in this chest. And I went through it and I pulled it out and I went to every single child and I said, yo, you're in 6th grade. Here's my 6th grade report card. It was like DF, DF, you know, it was like horrible. And I gave every kid, I'm like, I was horrible at school. And these are the things that I did. And I'm constantly trying to just lower that kind of perfectionism and really show these kids who I am so that they can be themselves and realize like, listen, no one's perfect. And if you think someone is, then, you know, they're full of shit. And that was another process for me to get closer to my kids.
Yeah. Awesome.
I love that John Legend, not John Lennon. What was that song about his father? But it's like, he's dying and it's like, you know my mistakes and I know yours. I mean, that is like made me cry when I heard that. I was like, oh my God, if I can get to that point on my deathbed when my kids know my mistakes and I know theirs, dude, then I've become the best parent in the world.
Yeah, it's great. I got to go find out that song. I don't know what song.
Oh, it's I'll send it to you. What is it like? Yeah, it's not Legend. It's I forget. I'll think about it.
Okay, cool. Couple more questions. Here's the next one. What's next for Peter? What's next for Peter Kennedy?
You know, I don't know, man. It's like I'm trying not to like make too many plans. You know, it's like that cliche of like God laughs at plans. You know, it's like actually I know what's going on. Right now, I'm doing this 6-month program, intensive program with Conchetta, this woman I work with, and it is like hardcore, dude. It's like every morning, wake up early, and you know, journal. I read. So intentional. Just how do I want to feel that day? What do I want to experience? I work out every single day now. I'm just doing this 6-month intensive where it's like everything I put in my body, I want it to be, you know, healthy and good and not being crazy about it, but being super intentional about everything. And yeah, and doing breath work and meditation every day, just like focusing on that. And so that's what I'm doing. Whenever I felt like kind of off kilter, this year has been very hard for me. You know, the house burned down and a lot was happening in our lives. And I needed this kind of like slap in the face, this reset. And so Conchetta's like, yeah, let me craft this for you. And so that's what we're in the middle of. So we're about a month and a half in. And yeah, and other than that, man, just crush it at work and have fun. And you know, yeah, I don't know. I don't zero plans, Clay. I don't know. What do you have a big plan? Like what's going on with you? Do you have like this master plan?
You're looking at it. I mean, like the conversation you and I had today, that's all I want to do.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a part of my plan. I'm starting a podcast with a buddy of mine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. He's we're filming the first episode March 21st. And it's a good buddy of mine who he's like this crazy ass investor and like he worked for all these big foundations and he's just like the most connected dude I've ever met in my life. But he's been on this deep spiritual journey as I have. And we'll get on the phone and just talk about like, what are we crushing on right now? What life, all these, oh my gosh, this is what I believe. And we'll talk for like 2 hours. And we're like, this is fascinating. We should like do a podcast. And with his connections, we can bring on some pretty interesting people. And we're going to have you on there. And it's just, I think why the podcast might be interesting is because we're both kind of like standard dudes, you know, and we talk about the crazy shit we do and we're super vulnerable. And it's kind of like this podcast, you know, and we're not doing it for any other reason than it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I think the world needs more of this, especially men like are willing to be vulnerable and just connect and talk and it's because they care about their lives and the people around them. And so can't wait to hear more about this show you're going to put on. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm so impressed that you do it alone. Like I was like, it's not something I want to do alone, you know, but that's just, I think that's a level up when you can just run these by yourself, you know? So
well, I'm an amazing man.
Dude, you are, man. You are though. But that's that's the other thing, by the way. Pause and just say that. I mean, it sounds so hokey and cheesy, but like you are an amazing human being. You are. And I'm an amazing human being. And yeah, do we have our own shit? Yeah, but that makes us amazing as well. You're so unique. And taking so much appreciation for that. It's just,
Hmm.
yeah.
I love that. Thanks for adding that in. I think more people, people don't celebrate themselves. They rarely say to others that they're proud of themselves. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. We don't need to be arrogant and puff up our ego from a fear-based stance, but yeah, can we just appreciate what we're creating in the world,
Yeah, because I see my problems constantly. It's like I'm just like constantly scanning for the shit that needs to be fixed, or and I just don't sit down and really appreciate where I am and how I got here.
Yeah.
As much
Well,
as
you
I
have a
should.
lot. You have a lot to be proud of. You've done some incredible stuff, and I love it that you're telling your story because the road you have been will and is impacting how others will choose to be on their path. So thank you for doing that. I've got 2 quick questions that I ask everybody, and then we'll wrap up. First, if you could whisper one truth into every leader's ear, what would it be?
That's a good question. I should have. Did you tell me this before? I should have
I
thought
didn't
about
tell
this.
you.
I know you didn't tell me about this. One truth into every leader's ear: be vulnerable. I try to be vulnerable every day with my employees. When I don't know something, I let them know. When I'm worried about something, I let them know. Yeah, I'm very
I love
vulnerable.
that, and I subscribe to that. I think the answer, the why be vulnerable, would be the second part of that question. That would be maybe even more meaningful. Why is that important for leaders to do?
Because they're able to show up in their authentic self. That's it. Like,
And why is that important?
because if you're not showing up as your authentic self, then you're showing up as your ego. And that ego is a destructive motherfucker. That is why we have problems at these companies. It's ego. And if I show up and saying, listen, I don't have all the answers. You probably have better ideas than me. I didn't sleep very well last night. I just feel like a shitbag today. It gives everyone else permission to just drop the egos and be themselves. When I like somebody, why do I like them? It's because they're authentic and they're real. Authenticity is the greatest thing in the world, right? And they're real people. They're not trying to have this shield and all this other bullshit. And when someone is authentic and I respect them and I like them, I work harder for them because they care about me, and I'm committed to their success. They're committed to my success. Period. So, to me, it's all about dampening the ego, not getting rid of it because you can't get rid of it, but just dampening the ego down so that your true self can come out. And that's the only way to do it, is just you do it. Like, dude, be vulnerable. Who gives a shit? You're the owner of the company. What are they going to fire you? I mean,
Yeah.
just see what happens.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I love it. Second one is related but different. What truth helps the giant in you rise up when fear drags you down?
knowing that this entire thing is a spiritual simulation. That's how I believe.
I think I'm tracking with you, but just so we're not guessing what you mean by simulation, what do you mean?
Yes. I don't think this is like some video game where you're fake and I'm fake and none of this exists. This is 100% real. This is a real dimension that we're living in. This is all 100% true. But I believe that we created this life, our souls created this life for them to grow and for us to grow. Now, why do I think that? Well, dude, there's something called superposition where something is not actually rendered until it's actually observed, right? Well, why is that? And what does that mean? It means that I'm in superposition at all times. Now, not in the, quantum physics way that they think about it, but in the sense that I get to choose constantly how I want to behave, how I want to think, and how I want to be. And so when I wake up in the morning and my daughters are fighting over who gets to wear this piece of clothing, in the past, I would put my foot on the ground and I would start walking in there and I'd get more and more angry and I'd be like, just stop screaming. But now I wake up, hear the screaming, and I pause and I realize I'm in superposition. I can think and feel any way I want. So I could be the loving father, the angry dad, whatever it is. And how I behave and what I choose to think is manifestation. I am manifesting a better result when I'm in this mindset versus when I just go in there unconscious and I start screaming at people. I'm manifesting a horrible outcome. That's really why I think this is a simulation, is because manifestation is real. And I'm not talking about like manifest $1 million. Like, I'm talking about manifesting deeper, more meaningful relationships with people around you. So
We
call me a
always
little
are.
cuckoo, but
no, I won't call you cuckoo. I mean, we're always at choice. We can't control the world around us, but we can completely control ourselves and how we want to react to the world around us.
we can't choose the world. We can't control the world around us 100%, we can affect the world around us.
Sure,
You
of
know,
course.
because when I walk into a room and I'm in business and I'm just like angry, that room shifts. But when I walk in open and vulnerable and authentic, dude, I am changing the frequency of that room. There's no question about it. And people are attracted to that. And so, there's definitely coherence that you can create within relationships with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this has been awesome. Before we sign off, is there anything else you want to share? Anything you want to pitch about Evolvewell or the podcast or Alex's breathwork sessions or anything else you want to pitch?
Yeah. So we have Evolvewell Journeys on YouTube where you can participate in our practice. Alex is just an amazing musician, breathwork facilitator. So check those out. My book, The Remembering. Yeah, check it out. It's if you're into business, one of my favorite books is Michael Singer's Surrender Experiment, and it's a little like that where it talks about my business experience, but also kind of like my own awakening. Yeah, check out the book. You can find it pretty much anywhere. And that's it, man. I'm just pumped. If people want to reach out to me for any reason, I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and all those places. So feel free to find me. And yeah, would love to hear about your journey. I just love that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, this is, where did we clock in here? An hour 30 about, and this was quick and fast and easy and fun. And this is exactly why I wanted to start this podcast, was for conversations exactly like this. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with you. Thank you for bringing your vulnerability and your openness and showing your bumps and bruises and celebrating all the things you've done. It's just been so fun for me. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Dude, thank you. And my vibration is rising, dude. Literally, it really just like set me off on a good pace today. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I love it. Yeah.
Hi, bro.
Thank you too for being here. It's an hour and a half of your day. And and if you're here, you've gotten something from this. And so I'm glad you're participating in this conversation. If you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, please follow me in the show, Clay Stelzer. Each week, we're having these kinds of conversations where we stop pretending, we name our fears, we remember what it takes to stand tall as the giants we already are. So when leaders get real, they make it safe for others to do the same. That's what Pete and I were talking about earlier. So please subscribe or follow wherever you listen to podcasts, share this with other leaders, leave a review if you're inclined, and help more people feel what's possible when fear doesn't run the show. Thanks so much.